Thank you everyone else here who's joined the webinar. It's so nice to see you guys. And even though there's a time difference here in Finland to Asia, it's we're still awake everyone and good to find a time that works for everyone. So yeah, to get to the subject, securing organizational digitalization efforts. It's quite a long title, but we'll get through it and move along. Yeah, so the overview for this presentation or this webinar is we're going to have then the introduction to what is calibration and digitalization efforts and why do we digitalize, key drivers for digitalization efforts, and give some examples and challenges with all of this. We'll also look at a bit of digitalization and security, how they connect with each other and maybe the mismatch between them. And we also need to look over how to understand the security in the digital era and look over a bit with IT versus OT. And we're also going to look at how to ensure that we are remaining secure or as secure as we can be and safeguard when we are digitally transforming and building a secure organization and ecosystem. So the first thing we're actually going to go over is what is calibration. So we're going to have a bit of a poll, so you can select from the poll and quizzes what you think is the correct answer for this. You have one option, so it's a bit of a statistical challenge if you want to look at it as this. But yeah, go ahead and please answer, and we'll see what the answers are. And of course, calibration can be something that it's just not one thing. It can be multiple things, but in a general sense of things, this is looking at calibration and what it is. So we'll wait a minute for that as well. Yeah. Let's see if everyone has had time to look at the polls a bit. So yeah, the correct answer for this, if we look at the different types of answers we could choose, align a device's settings to match a manufacturer's defaults. Yeah, it could be one. It could be comparing a measurement instrument to a known standard and adjusting it, or cleaning and resetting a machine, estimating values based on previous measurements. So all of these are related to it. But yeah, good to see that we have 100%. So we have lots of people understanding and being able to look at the questions, and everyone chose B, comparing a measurement instrument to a known standard and adjusting. Great. So then we have a great understanding of what calibration is. So yeah, calibration is really about looking at a measurement and then looking at another measurement, which is some form of standard, and seeing how we are in the terms of the reference standard and determining if necessary if we need to adjust this the calibration that we took from an instrument. So why do we do calibration? Well, it's to ensure the measurement is accurate and reliable. We want the calibrated hardware or software to be accurate and reliable in producing its own type of data. We also need to maintain consistency and comparability with other types of devices. It also helps to reduce errors and improve decision making when we use calibration services. And we also support the compliance and a lot of laws and regulations in terms when it comes especially to the pharmaceutical industry, but also other industries, we have to have compliance. And it's also many times to protect financial and business outcomes due to the fact that calibrations can aid with this. And of course, a great deal is regarding product quality, meaning that we get the most amount of or closest to having ingredients in a product or that sort. And we also safeguard people and the environment by having calibration. So in that sense, we use the correct amount of some form of entity in the hardware or software systems. So that's calibration in short. Now, moving on to the second one, which I wanted to look at, digitalization, and digital transformation. So these are all more or less the same, but they differ in the way that maybe they connect with each other, and then the far spreading connection they have with the things they interact with. So digitization is fixing something in the past. This is the process of converting something from analog to digital. This may be that you have documentation which is in a paper format, which you then convert into a digital format and having it stored on a server. You maybe have it to your customers or internally. Digitalization, which we are looking at and most focusing on this, is fixing the present. Currently, what are we doing currently to introduce digital technologies to transform certain operations and services and practices? These can be analog practices. They can also be other digital practices, but we're trying to use technology in a sense to get more out of it. Digital transformation then is the holistic approach to digitalization, meaning that we interact with the entire company or entire processes, not just a certain subsection of an organization or process. So this is the overarching interaction on digitalization across, for example, an organization. This is just to give a clear look at this. So we can look at digitization to digitalization in this example. So we begin with digitization. We have an operator in a processing plant. He or she scans a physical calibration result with a smartphone, maybe in an application. In the digitalization effort, the scan result is then uploaded to a system or an entity, a server, securely stores the data, and then you can analyze and process the data to get more data out of it, to maybe look at some KPIs or other forms of data. And then the outcomes of this is we may get enhanced efficiency, we may streamline, boost productivity, we get a data-driven approach, meaning that we focus on the data to move forward, to actually make decisions based on the data. And we try to enhance the customer experience. And then one of the big things, increased agility, meaning how we operate, how we're able to work with different types of processes. We're able to change. We're not focused. We're not static. So why do we do digitalization efforts? Well, it's one of the first things are the operational efficiency. We want to increase productivity and a faster time to market. We want to reduce operational costs and waste. We also want a data-driven approach, which I've talked about, and we want to improve the transparency and visibility of the decisions that we do. It brings customer value. We get better user experience and satisfaction, and we also might get some personalization and seamless interactions with other systems. We talked a bit about business agility, faster innovation cycles. This was something I talked about not being static. And we're also being able to grow, meaning we have scalable digital foundation to build upon. And we get new businesses, models, and revenue streams from doing this digitalization effort. Modernization, we replace outdated system, and we're being future-proof architecture. So look into the future. How is the environment changing? How is the socioeconomic landscape changing? How is the political landscape changing and moving with this? So some popular digitalization efforts is, for example, cloud computing is a big one. These are technological integrations or innovations. Artificial intelligence, as everyone knows, is a big thing currently in digitalization efforts. Software as a service is also a big one, where you sell software in terms of subscription costs or other means. Internet of Things is also a big one, and robotic process automation, RPAs. And then when it comes to software development, which is closely related to my field, is no code or low code development. Meaning that you don't know actually have to you actually don't know have to know how to code, but you can actually write it. And then looking at other areas, we have business transformation, we have online services, enterprise resource planning, ERP systems, CRM systems. We're also having cultural revolutions. We're moving to many areas, and organizations are moving to remote first, agile operations, development and operationals, DevOps thinking. And we also have digital training and learning platforms these days, which is a huge thing. And then moving again, we look at this data-driven decision making. We get business intelligence, we get advanced analytics, we also get sensor data and industrial IoT. And we can use this with AI, machine learning, sensor data, to move forward with the data that we have to make informed decisions that we as humans are not able to process ourselves, but we use the help of digitalization practices to do this. So some statistics on digitalization, and this is looking both in the general socioeconomic landscape, but also a bit more to then Asian and Southeast Asian. And in 61% of the C-suite executives consider digitalization a top priority from a study. But only around 21% of organizations have a C-suite leading these digitalization initiatives, meaning that they think it's important, but they don't really have the means of doing this. They don't really have the spark of doing it from the organizational level. 58% of US UK organizations plan to increase the spending on digitalization in 2024. Then looking a bit at the global digital landscape, we have Asia. Asia holds around 60%-ish of digital technological patents. That's huge. So looking at digitalization, Asia is there in the big player in this area. Asia represents nearly 60% of global online retail sales. This is also a big thing in the whole scheme of digitalization. Looking back at the pandemic, the impact of that, we had digitalization was a big thing here from digital payment systems adaptations through Asia. 40 to 50% around e-commerce growth in Vietnam, Indonesia, and India during the pandemic. And we see here from the spreadsheet as also this as looking at how the spread of the growth in e-commerce and during the pandemic. So some examples of these, you may think of, well, I don't really know where digitalization comes in, but if you look at this, we have, for example, Blockbuster versus Netflix. I don't know if many people know Blockbusters these days, but they were a huge operation in the later in the 1990s and early 2000s, and but the thing was they didn't digitize in the same sense that Netflix did. Of physical medium. Blockbuster sadly went under due to this. And this was the terms of you have to innovate to be able to stay digital and actually stay competitive. Audi is a big car sales. They build a lot of cars and sell a lot of cars, and they have always used digital showrooms, quite early adopters of this, looking at cars from a digital perspective. Then we also have one big one, which is interesting, is Amazon's uh, concept of this, of just walk out shopping, they call it, where you have these stores with lots of sensors and cameras, where you can just go into a store, grab things from the shelf, and just go out. And the amount you don't have to pay at a terminal, it actually draws from your credit card or debit card when you walk out, based on the stuff that you took from the shelves. So this is moving from having actual physical stores, but introducing some digitalization technologies in this. And then you have digital stores. You still have analog systems. You still have physical products that you grab from the shelf. It's not like someone grabbing them and driving them home to you. You actually bring them and grab them yourselves. But you have this digitalization. The payments of this is handled by Amazon systems and cameras and sensors. Moving quickly along, then Zara has this. This is a huge clothing company. They have this RFID inventory tracking system. If you see somewhere, if you go into Zara, you can sometimes see these panels that they go through and scan the codes to see how much do we have of certain type of item clothing. This is a big deal, and other companies are adapting this. Smart Nation Singapore is then moving to a more nationwide initiatives. So this is not just looking at organizations or companies or businesses. This is also entire nations moving to this, focusing on technology and digitalization efforts. And Coursera is a huge platform, and they have introduced AI content and personalization efforts quite rapidly. So what actually drives digitalization? Well, the key here is evolution. The evolution of not just the business, but the technologies behind them, the socioeconomic landscape evolving. So everything moving forward means that everything else that is connected to it needs also to evolve. So that's the key of this. But of course, you have other type of key drivers, which is market and competitive pressures. You may have other businesses who work in competition, and you need to evolve, innovate. You have economic efficiency, trying to be as economical as possible from a perspective of an organization. You might have the strategy and agility to focus on it. Yeah, that's something in your plan. A big part is regulatory and environmental factors. You have lots of these regulatory demands, not just, for example, GDPR, NIS2, these huge frameworks which Most companies doing business, for example, if you have European customers, you have to follow the GDPR to ensure that their information and data is safeguarded. And societal and workforce changes we spoke a bit about before also, with the socioeconomic landscape changing. And then a big one is the technological advancements. I mean, AI, machine learning was a big thing a couple of years ago, if you say 5, 10 years ago. But in recent years, in recent months, this has skyrocketed. So these areas changes quite rapidly depending on how the world is changing. So this is why it's also difficult to try to find and find a path in this. So challenges that we might face, organizations might face, individuals might face when it comes to digitalization is resistance to change. We might not think that we have to change or want to change. We have this siloed mentality that, oh, this is a special thing. This, our product, our system is a special, so it's siloed. There might be leadership gaps in terms of knowledge, in terms of moving forward. That's closely connected with skills shortage. There's a skill shortage in the entire technological landscape. And compliance demands is also a big thing. It's quite difficult, time consuming to follow compliance demands. And if we want to follow a certain standard, if we want to have a certain standard, it can be quite time consuming and cost quite a lot. Technological challenges, we have increased the risks when we're doing digitalization, the risks increase. Technological and security threats increases. We'll look at this a bit more later on, so won't focus on that quite so much. Financial and strategic barriers are also a big thing. Like there's a high upfront cost of doing digitalization. These systems that we try to look into, they can cost quite a lot. They can be expensive. And it's also difficult to understand what do we need? And also the fear of is this the right thing for us? What happens in 5 months with this software system? So that's a big thing in all of this. And we might have unclear return on investment predictions. Will this actually make us some form of return? We don't know. It's a black box sometimes. And fragmented digital strategy. We have different type of ideas. Oh, marketing wants to do this. R&D wants to do this, but we need a unified goal. It needs to start from the top, from the leadership, and flow throughout the organization. Now I talked quite a bit, so we'll move on to the next questionnaire. So what is technological and digital security? So please go ahead and choose an answer here. So we can have different types of ideas here of what is actually security in this sense. They might all be related to security. Some are more aligned to what is digital security. Some are more aligned to other types of security. But go ahead and choose something that fits best for you, and we'll see how the spread looks regarding the answers. So as I said, there's no right or wrong questions. You won't pass or fail any exams for doing this. It's just to get a bit of interaction and see what the current standing is around this notion. We'll wait a few more seconds to get some answers. Yeah. Yes. So good spread. We have some people saying that it's number B, ensuring that only authorized individuals can access systems. Yes. We have most people selecting safeguarding systems, networks, and data from digital threats and unauthorized access. Most of the times when it comes to polls, this is interesting. It's often the longest answer that people chooses, and it's not to say that's wrong. It's actually quite correct. But actually, from all of these, every single one of this is correct in a sense for what digital security is. But in terms of most correctness, and when it comes to maybe a research perspective or from an actual perspective, maybe number C could be seen as the most wholesome. But we'll move along to talk a bit what is security, and that is something that is closely to my heart, something that I thrive speaking about. I call myself a bit of a tinfoil hat when it comes to security. Focusing on security can be sometimes seen as quite quite something that is, oh, it's just risks. It's someone thinking too much about what could go wrong. But we'll look into what security actually is. So from a high-level perspective, technological security is understanding and managing both complexities, risks, and threats to ensure that we maintain confidentiality, integrity, and availability of systems, people, and data. Oh, this is a very research-focused answer, but it's what it means is that we focus on what is complex, what is difficult, what risks do we have, what could go wrong, what threats do we have, are the threats from inside the system, outside the systems, and what could we do to prevent this? We want to maintain confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And what this means is confidentiality is that it actually remains secure. Something is confidential, top secret. No one else can look at it. The integrity is looking at it hasn't been changed. The data hasn't been manipulated. The calibration result hasn't been changed by someone or some entity. The availability is that the calibration results are available to you at any time. So this is the overarching concepts of looking at this. So we want to maintain confidentiality, integrity, and availability, also when we do digitalization efforts. But to look a bit more on a granular basis, cybersecurity is actually different from information security, and cybersecurity is the niche term of explaining everything in terms of technological security. But cybersecurity actually focuses on upholding the CIA triad, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, to all system, processes, and entities. Information security focuses on upholding the CIA triad, remember, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, to information and data. Cybersecurity, or I would say holistic approach. Information security actually on the data. But the overall goal of security is we want to minimize risks, because we have to understand risks can't be eliminated. You will never be 100% secure or safe, but we can try to have things to do with risks, manipulate the risk, transfer the risk, accept the risk. We want to minimize it. We want to contain it. We want to know it and control it. That's what security is about. Why do we focus on security? Why should it be a thing? Why shouldn't we just focus on digitalization and skip security all in all? Well, we have business continuity and risk management. So this is a big thing, ensuring that we survive if something were to happen. We minimize the operational disruption that we have. If something happens, we want to minimize the adverse effects. We want to be ready and lower the attack surface of something happening. The financial and legal impacts. We want to avoid costly breaches or regulatory fines. I mean, if you have a breach for information control systems and you're GDPR compliant, then it's a huge impact to your business potentially. We also want reputation and trust. I mean, any company that is seen as being unsecure will have an impact negatively on the brand and customer trust. So even if you're not a security-focused company, even if you're an organization who gets hit with ransomware, malware, or you leak data, this will impact your reputation as an organization. We also have the compliance and governance, as we talked about, meeting these industrial requirements, adapting to legal and compliance landscapes, which are always changing. We need also the strategic and competitive value, like we need to safeguard the intellectual properties that we have and the strategic assets that we have. We need to have security as a quality, as an innovation enabler. It shouldn't be something seen as a checkbox, like, oh, we are secure or not secure. It should be something that evolves, that interlinks with other aspects of an organization and its development of products. And it's to also focus on something big these days, which is the supply chain and third-party assurance. So this is a huge part, and it's something this is seen throughout organizations. We have supply chain attacks, meaning that if we have an adverse threat, they will want to attack you, let's say your organization, but you are too big. So they look at your providers, your supply chain, people or organizations which work with you in some sense. And they might be more insecure than you, meaning they can get a foothold in your company through these suppliers or third-party vendors. So this is a huge thing of also focusing on not just the organization itself, but also the supply chain. The mismatch of digitalization efforts and security are many, but some of the biggest one is speed versus security. You could also say anything versus security because everything works against security in a sense. Because to be secure, you have to focus on what could go wrong. And speed and efficiency and productivity doesn't always work well with security. Technical debt is something that means that we take on new solutions, new technological innovations, new IoT devices, new CRM systems. But that builds the technical debt. And as we talked about earlier, if we have this debt, we have these suppliers, we have these organizations that work with us, and if we pile on this, we will be more and more, we have a bigger and bigger risk gap, meaning we open ourselves up more and more. Skills gap, this is a huge one, not just in terms of security. There's a huge market demand for security professionals, but there's also a huge demand for technological and digitalization experts. Because just because you're a security expert doesn't mean you're a digitalization expert. And expanding attack surface, as I mentioned, that's close related to technical debt. If we begin to take on more, we open up to more digitalization, the attack surface will expand. So in this sense, yes, security is about managing risks. Digitalization is about exploring new options. So they might go not really good hand in hand, but this is something that I want to try to focus on is what can we do to stay digital, to try to or stay secure by focusing on digitalization efforts. So we'll come back to this a bit later in the slides, but now we'll look a bit at IT, information technology, and operational technology. And please, in the chat or in the polls that comes up, choose one of these options. What do you think? What is the difference actually between information technology and operational technology? What is the big difference between these? So IT focuses on industrial machinery, while OT focuses on the software. IT manages data, digital systems, and OT controls physical processes and equipment. IT is newer than OT, so it's maybe more secure. And there's no actual difference. They mean the same thing. Please choose an option which you think is the correct answer. Then we'll wait a few seconds still, and you'll be able to choose your option. We'll see what the results show. It's interesting to get some data. We are a data-driven presentation. We're a data-driven webinar. So it goes hand in hand with the presentational subject as well. So that's good to have connections with you guys. So good to see. Most people, 91% of the participants here chose option number B, which is the correct one. IT focuses on data and digital systems, information technology, and OT controls physical processes and equipment. So yeah, that's the whole consensus about the things related to what's the difference between IT and OT. Is that good to see? So to explore a bit more further, information technology, as I said, is to manage data and information systems. We want, as we said, explored earlier, we want to focus on confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the CIA. We often see IT in businesses, in offices, data centers, cloud computing. These systems can be networks, servers, software. This is IT. And they often get updated quite frequently and patch these systems. You have security patches, you have new Windows updates to your machine. And key roles in this managing information technology is administrators, developers, and security teams. They focus on information technology. Operational technology, and this, as we said, looks at physical devices and industrial processes. So robotic systems, sensors, these types of things in the processes. And we focus on trying to have uptime and safety and process reliability. And often we see this in the terms of, from a security priority, it's focusing actually on the CIAC, triad, not the CIA. We focus on control, then availability, then integrity, and then confidentiality. So the focus here is to have control over these systems. You need to be able to control these systems to management. We need to have them available at all times. We need to find that they haven't been messed with, the integrity of them, and then confidentiality, that they actually produce what they're supposed to produce. So there's a bit different there from a security system or security perspective of what we focus on. Operational technology can be seen in factories, in critical infrastructure, PLCs, SCADA systems, DCS, and sensors. These are common systems that use that interlinks with operational technology. And we don't have as frequent updates to these systems. They run maybe for decades in closed off areas, meaning that they aren't connected to the internet and they don't get updated quite as often because they don't need to. They are focused on moving a file from one section to the other section. So this system doesn't have to be updated as much. So they don't have to have a Windows machine behind them getting Windows updates every other day. And key roles focusing on operational technologies, then control engineers, plant operators, automation specialists. You know this, hopefully, these type of people. So this is how they're quite similar, but not similar in all ways and all systems. So to the core of this presentation, how do we stay secure for digitally transforming? So now you have heard me rambling on that, oh, it's difficult to do digitalization, it's difficult to do security. Oh, why should we do this? Well, there are ways of doing this. One shouldn't be let down by security engineers talking about how difficult things are. Because yes, they are difficult. We have to acknowledge that. We shouldn't ignore that. But there are ways that we can focus on. So to begin with, we have to have core principles in place. This is what I talked about. For example, leadership support. You have to have leadership support about staying both secure and digital. You have to have the support like, yes, we as an organization want to be digital. We want to transform in a digital sense, but we also want to stay secure. So this is supported not just by a security engineer or security team somewhere in the organization, but from the leadership. It has to be supported from leadership. So the governance needs to be a pinpoint and priority of this. A big thing in security is something called secure by design philosophy, and this is taken up by in the US and also in Europe, but and also in Asia. But that is meaning that we focus on security from the onset of projects, not when we're trying to deliver it to customers, but we focus on it from the start of any planning, of thinking of oh, now we want to introduce a new CRM system. But then we think we have an expert focusing on security say that, yeah, we could do this, but we should remember to think about the supply chain. Because as we explored earlier, the skill gap is so big, and this is quite a complex field. So we have to have these individuals, these subject matter experts, these professionals who know their field. We need to have someone who is digitally expert, someone who is security, someone who is organizational, and these work together. It's not just one individual who focuses on this. It's a team effort. We need to then also understand the organization. We need to understand what is it what we do, what is it that we produce, what do we want to actually what do we actually want to do, what do we want to improve. These questions need to be answered, written down, and understood by everyone who is focused on this digitalization security effort. We need to have a strategic vision, long-term objectives aligned with the business goals. We need to understand where do we want to get to and how should we get there. And this can be done by planning for transformation, how we meet these goals. We need to identify what we need to get out of this. We need to assess where we are and be realistic. We need to be pragmatic in this sense. We need to be capable and ready to do this. And we also need to understand the industry as a whole. What do our competitors do? What is the regulation around this? How is European legislation affecting us in Asia? Like, this is why it's so important to have an understanding of the entire globe, of how it's doing, and having experts focusing on their certain field and coming up with ideas. We also need to have looking at maybe what competitors are doing. How are they doing things? And how are they succeeding? Looking at Blockbuster versus Netflix. If Blockbuster maybe looked a bit more at what Netflix was doing, they maybe had changed directions. Not to say that they didn't, but as an example. So we need to ask questions. How is the industry evolving? How are strategies, how are competitors doing? And how is the world evolving? We also need, from a security perspective, look at focusing on for getting up with a policy from a security perspective and having a roadmap. So in the same sense, you do digitalization efforts. You see like where we're going in 10 years, 5 years, 2 months. You also need to have a roadmap from a security perspective. What are we doing in 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 days, 10 years? So that's the core principles. Then we're moving on to risk, threats, and complexities, which we talked about. Security is about managing these, understanding these. So we need to understand and manage risks from a risk management framework. These needs to be technical risks, operational risk, environmental risks, and you need to take these into a system and prioritize them. What is the most risks? What is the impact of something bad happening? What is the financial impact? What is the operational impact? What's the environmental impact of something happening? And then you need to also identify your digital assets or assets overall. What are the biggest assets? It's our servers. Is this our production plant? Is it our employees? What is the biggest assets that we have as an organization? And we also need to look at what are the threats that could happen and focus then on the high risks. Take maybe some of the first risks that are easy to fix, maybe installing the latest updates to a system, but also then focusing on high impact risks, focusing on what could happen if someone got into our production plant and installed somewhere. We also then to focus on technical implementations, secure network, data protection mechanisms, identity and access management, secure development practices. Depending on your organizations, you have a bigger attack surface, you have a bigger technical depth. You need to focus on the technical implementation that can do to safeguard these. Operational actions. We need to be continuous monitoring and threat detection. We need to always have ways of looking into a system. How are we being attacked? What can we do to protect against them? We need to look at the supply chain and do a risk assessment there as well. We need to be looking at this from having a business continuity and organizational reliance. And then an important one, security awareness and cultural integration. It's difficult. When I worked as a software developer, I did because I was interested in security, but most, for example, developers don't focus on security. That's not the priority. The priority was about fixing a system, making it faster, more efficient, more reliable, not making it more secure. That's someone else's job. But this is what awareness is here about. And this is a bit about this webinar, making awareness that security is important and the cultural sense of things. There are secure digital manufacturing processes, SCADA and ICS systems, protecting PLCs and MES systems, and then also segmentation of OT and IT systems. These are some actions you can do. But this presentation is not about actually going into detail what you should do. This is more about looking at what the process is looking like if you begin to do this. So we won't go into details about doing this. We won't have the time. We would need to spend maybe a week to look at that. Then we have to look at continuous improvement cycles. Like what can we do continuously to improve both digitalization and security? It should be seen, these efforts should be seen as ongoing efforts. You are never secure, you are never digital. There's always a process because the world is evolving and you need to evolve. So just because you become certified doesn't mean that you're secured. There's an ongoing process. You need to always perform key metric analysis. You need to focus on the data. How are we being attacked? How fast are our production systems working? Have we have downtime? What was the issues related to that? And focusing on the data, make decisions based on that. Then also looking at industrial specific considerations. We have critical infrastructure protection, focuses on focusing on the critical infrastructure that a business might have and focusing on securing that. Cloud security best practices you need to follow. GCP, good clinical practices. GMP, good manufacturing practices. These are standards, but these are industrial specific. And yeah, moving along. I think this next slide is a big and important one. Securing digitalization is not about technology alone. It's not just about that. It's not about the operative system in your cell phone. It's not about the CRM systems that you use. It's about enabling your organizations to achieve its missions more effectively while managing risks, threats, and complexities appropriately. So this is securing digitalization. It's not about the standards that you have achieved. It's not about the tooling that you have or the products, the security products that you have. It's about enabling the organization. It's about enabling to achieve digitalization while managing these risks and threats. So that's more important than having an expensive threat detection system in place. And if you begin to put the cart before the horse, then it won't evolve to anything meaningful. Why I'm talking about this and why you may be thinking that, oh, this guy is just taking some information from Wikipedia and talking about it. But it's close to my heart because a system that I came up with when I did my master's degree thesis, where I focused on how to analyze organizations from a secure development perspective. So this focused on secure development practices, but these actions, which I talk about here in this framework, can be adapted to any organization, not just those focusing on software development. So what I came up with when I looked at the literature, I looked at organizations and I looked at the current data, was that we need to have support from the governance. We need to have leadership support, which I talked about. We need to have the resources in place, communication, documentation. These needs are the most important foundation of wise. The governance, the leadership needs to understand these baselines, and I categorize them as strategic foundation, operational discipline, and cultural human factors. And these are the baselines we talked about, having a secure culture, having a digital culture. The leadership governments needs to focus and accept these. This is the foundation. If you don't have this, you shouldn't do anything. The organization can then have an organizational profile. This looked at what are we doing, why are we doing it, how are we doing it. Then you get to the risks. What are the risks? What are our attack surface? What are our threats? Have we done risk assessments for this? Then you get the next one, which is guidance. Here you begin to take all the data that you got from the foundation, profiling and risks, and you build roadmaps, you build policies, you build structures, you build upon the data that you have. And then you embed. Then you focus on taking everything that you've learned and actually doing it. And that's why it's called Reforge, because this is a repetitive action of foundation, organizational profile, risks, guidance, embed. And this goes on and on and on in cycles. This is something that needs to be done quite a lot. But at the core of this is expertise and data. You need to have people who are knowledgeable about their area of expertise, and you need to focus on the data. And if you have these things, then it's by my thoughts and by my research from what I've taken and looked at that this is something that will be effective and you'll be able to do something securely, digitally secure. This is just an example. There are other ways of doing this, and may not be seen as a practice you should do, but this is an example of it. So a big thing, focusing on being a secure organization and focusing on secure organization of the vendors, focusing a bit more on the supply chain of things is to have working with organizations and vendors which are proven. They have a good reputation and maturity. They have a good track record of being digital and secure. They have maybe certifications and security standards in place, like ISO 27001 or 17025. These type of organizations have had some external parties looking at them. and came up with, oh, they are secure in a sense. They are modern, secure digital infrastructure. They work with modern systems. They are transparent and trustworthy. They don't hide the information, but they actually confront it and talk about it. They have data protection in place. They are privacy by design. We talked about security by design, but also privacy by design. Security governance and risk management is a big part of this. So when you're looking at working with vendors, look at, do they have a secure governance in place? Do they have risk management systems in place? Ask these questions. You also have to be looking at communication and culture of security. How are they communicating things? How are they having security built in from the start, from a governance perspective? And the biggest one, trust, but verify. Trust an organization, but do the work of actually verifying that what they're saying is actually true. That's a big thing. It's a bit more like Churchill's quote of hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. Trust, but verify also. So to look a bit then, a bit about security and digitalization in technological models. So this is quite a lot of text, but we'll look at a different type of models that we have in the current landscape. So I've talked about on-premise solutions. This is an on-premise system is something which is hosted internally at an organization. You might have a server, you might have a calibration equipment which is on-premise. Then you have cloud solutions, Amazon Cloud, Google Cloud, you have Azure, all these cloud providers. Most applications these days are cloud provided, meaning that the data is stored somewhere in the cloud and you have easy access to it. And then you have application solutions. These might be mobile applications. So this is a bit in the middle. But the most times you have differentiation is on-premise solutions and cloud solutions. Characteristics for these are that on-premise, you manage them yourself. You have complete control of them. They can be air-gapped, meaning that they are not connected to the internet or any other network. To have an on-premise system might be higher upfront costs because you have a lot of infrastructure, a lot of systems that you have set up yourself and manage yourself. Cloud solutions in another way, software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. This means that you pay often a subscription cost to get these types of software, platforms, or infrastructure. You have a reduced physical footprint. You don't have to have an office for this. You have high availability because someone else, the engineers at the company that you're buying from, need to make sure that they are available, the services. And the operational expenditure means that you pay often for what you use most of the time. And mobile applications, as you know, are most often third parties provided, like web apps. And they are often API driven, like you can get data to them to and from quite easily. Security considerations with on-premise software is that you have to have physical security controls. People shouldn't be able to get to these systems easily. You need to have in-house security matter experts to focus on securing these systems. You have limited dependencies because you don't have to work with other individuals or vendors. And you have customizable security measures which you can do yourselves, and you own the data completely. With cloud solutions, we talked about the managing of risk. Here you transfer the risk to someone else. You say that, oh, I trust that these process and own my data, but I trust them to do this. This is transferring the risk. You don't own it yourself. The risk is with you. You're transferring the risk to someone else. Of course, it's still up to you to ensure that they are secure, the ones that you use for cloud solutions. Shared responsibility in this sense, you have a shared, you, as I spoke about, you are need to ensure that they are secure. And they also need to ensure that they are secure, the cloud providers. And it focuses on having the vendor security. And data residency means that they also have the data on their servers. So this is something to take into consideration. When we have application solutions, then like a mobile or web app, you transfer the risks. Also quite similar to cloud solutions. Cloud and application security is quite closely related, so they don't differ that much. But I thought of having it in a third column there to showcase a bit difference. Digitalization impact of being on-premise then is a greater amount of complexities. It's more up to you how you do digitalization, how you work with the data that you get. It's quite resource intensive also. You have to focus on everything yourself. And you have quite limited manual scalability, meaning that you need, if you want to apply more systems, you have to have a bigger office. You have to have more wires. You need to have more systems in place to be able to scale. However, cloud solutions then is more rapid deployment. You can get a new server in an instance just by clicking a button and buying a new server or expanding your subscription. It's easier to integrate with, and you have continuous improvement cycles. They can update the systems quite often. And applications, then you have quick time to value depending on the application provider, and you have a low technological barriers, meaning that people can use the application quite easily, and the focus is on user experience. So to wrap things up, spoken quite much now about and talked quite a lot about both digitalization and security. To wrap things up a bit, it might sound from this webinar, from this presentation, that digitalization is difficult and security is difficult, and I won't sweep anything under the rug. They are complex, they are difficult, and they are time consuming. But with the right mindset, with the right tooling, with the right people, with the right vendors, you can be digitalization, you can be digitally transforming, and you can be secure in the same sense. But what we need to understand that there is never, you never reach this, oh, now we are digital, now we are secure. This is something that needs to be realized and accepted, that we can never be secure. We can never really be digitalized. We have to always evolve. We have to transform. We have to, what is our risks? What is the competition doing? How is the regulatory landscape changing? How is the socioeconomic landscape changing? So work with vendors, work with individuals, work with subject matter experts who know their field. If you want to focus on security, focus on organizations that are secure, focus on security. If you need good calibration tooling, focus on organizations that are good with calibration tooling. So you need to focus on surrounding yourself with individuals and organizations which are focusing on their field and know their stuff. So I've spoken quite a lot. I look at the time. We have quite some minutes still left for any questions or comments. I'll be happy to take any of them, and if I don't know the answer, then I will try to point you towards the right direction. But overall, from me, thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully you learned something, and if nothing else, have a good rest of the day and work week. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Samuel, for a very interesting talk. I hope that everyone was able to learn something new. Would anyone like to unmute and ask Samuel a question? Or if you're shy, you can always put a question in the chat at the bottom of the Zoom screen.
Yeah, I'm not dangerous. It's free for all to ask questions, and I'm happy to talk with you guys.
Yeah, there's no strange question or anything. It's always good to ask questions if you've got any doubt at all. This is your opportunity. So Ashraf, thank you for your question. Ashraf asks, how do we ensure compliance with standards like ISO 17025, 21 CFR Part 11, or GXP in both IT and OT environments?
Great question. I think it could be another presentation or webinar in itself. It's difficult. It's because IT systems and OT systems are so vast. They are so big parts of organization these days. But there are other organizations, there are other types of tooling and services which can be used to get a more cohesive understanding of what are our IT and OT systems, because that's the biggest thing. Understanding what do we have, what are the risks, and how do we prevent any risks from actually realizing and becoming a threat. Like you have to understand your organization and understand your system. So beginning with just categorizing everything is a big part of this. And this involves IT systems, as I talked about, IT professionals, and also operational technology experts. Like what do we think, what do they think is the most important in this sense, and actually just gathering what all data do we have, what all systems do we have, gathering them into a Word document, gathering them into a system of understanding, oh, this is what we have, making a mind map of just realizing everything. So that's a manual step, but then you have digital aspects, like you can use digital solutions to map systems. So I think that's the biggest part, and not trying to focus on just meeting the standard requirements, the checkboxes. It's important because you have to be compliant, but also understanding that, oh, we want to minimize risks. We want to be more digitalized. And I would say that's the biggest part. Understanding organization and understanding your systems and getting that sense is the biggest part, I would say. And then you have lots and lots of options of how to do it. You can do it yourself, but you can do it also with other organizations and vendors as well. So I hope that gave you some idea and some navigation and guidance in this sense. I would say teamwork is the biggest thing here, working together. Yeah.
Hey, I have a. Can you hear me, Samuel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Sami Koskinen. I'm with BMX as well. Thank you, Samuel, first of all. Great presentation. The question that Ashraf asked, I think there's also good guidance document provided by the ISPE for especially for 21 CFR per 11 to be a compliant. So I think the ISP is also an asset. Explore. You can find the guidance if you don't know where to start. And I think the ISP is a great organization to start with.
Thank you for that. We take that as a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what I meant, like understanding both internally what you have, and then when you get the data that you have, looking at what do the experts, focusing on subject matter experts. Often we think of these as individuals. I am a security subject matter expert, I as an individual, but organizations can be subject matter experts. In a sense, we have, as you said, ISP is one expert in a field, BMX is one expert in a field, Microsoft is one expert in a field. So by using the highest degree of experts, you get the most results and the best results possible, I would say personally.
Thank you very much. We have I think we have time for one more question, if anyone would like to ask.
Yeah. If anyone asks anything about security, I'll start another presentation. We can speak about that.
Maybe another time, Samuel.
Yeah.
But for those that have missed the beginning of this session, the recording will be saved in the ISPE Singapore YouTube page. You just Google search it and you'll be able to find it. This, along with other webinars, Technical Tuesdays, as well as conference highlights, are actually saved on the channel. And also, obviously, if you have any questions for BMX or for Samuel in particular, please do let us know. We will forward them on and connect you. But otherwise, I'd like to thank Samuel for his time today. It's been a very interesting presentation. You've made it very lively and interactive, so thank you very much for that. And we're looking forward to seeing you and hopefully working with you again in the future.